The deafening silence of space was broken by the metallic bang that echoed through the hull of our ship. My eyes went wide, fixed on the monitoring screen, as a wave of shivers ran down my spine. There, emerging from the eternal darkness of the hidden side of the moon, was something that defied all logic and reason. A colossal structure, clearly artificial, pulsating with an ethereal light that shouldn't exist. Dr. Marcus Hartley, astrophysicist and leader of the Luna X mission, was about to become the bearer of a secret that would shake the foundations of human civilization. Our mission, originally conceived to map gravitational anomalies on the hidden face of the moon, had turned into something far beyond the scope of terrestrial science. The year was 1985, and the world below was still mired in the tensions of the Cold War. While the superpowers were vying for supremacy on Earth, we, a group of 5 scientists, were venturing where no human being had ever been before. Our ship, the Artemis 7, was the pinnacle of secret space technology, the result of unprecedented international collaboration, cloaked under layers of government secrecy. Marcus, do you see that? The shaky voice of Eleanor, our lunar geology expert, came over the intercom. Her pale face was reflected in the visor of her helmet, her eyes wide with disbelief. Affirmative, I replied, my own voice sounding strange to my ears. All systems are operational. This is real. Slowly, I maneuvered Artemis 7 into a lower orbit, our sensors picking up readings that caused the onboard computers to crash repeatedly. The structure below us stretched for kilometers, an intricate network of domes and towers that glowed with a bluish light, pulsing as if it were alive. Impossible, muttered Dmitri, our Russian astrobiologist. It can't be human work. The technology needed to build it is beyond anything we know. As we got closer, more disturbing details began to reveal themselves. The surface of the structure seemed to move, undulating as if it were breathing. Complex geometric patterns danced along its walls, changing and reconfiguring themselves in sequences that defied comprehension. We're receiving some kind of transmission, announced Yuki, our communications specialist. Her fingers danced over the console, trying to decipher the strange signals that flooded our receptors. It doesn't look like anything we've encountered before. It's organic, somehow. The air inside the ship became heavy with a mixture of fear and excitement. We were facing the greatest discovery in human history, but every fiber of my being was screaming that we should turn around and get out of there as quickly as possible. We need to report this immediately, said Jack, our systems engineer. His normally calm voice was tense, almost cracking. The world needs to know. I shook my head slowly, my eyes still fixed on the alien monstrosity below us. Negative. We can't risk an open broadcast. We don't know who or what could intercept it. The decision weighed on me like a ton of moon rock. We were the guardians of a secret that could change the course of human history, or, worse still, end it once and for all. Let's get closer, I announced, feeling the incredulous looks from my team. We need more data before we decide on our next move. As Artemis 7 descended towards the lunar surface, the alien structure seemed to expand, filling our entire field of vision. The bluish glow intensified, casting strange shadows inside our ship. Suddenly, a beam of light erupted from the structure, hitting us with unexpected force. Alarms sounded throughout the ship, lights flashed frantically. "We're losing power," shouted Jack, his fingers flying over the controls. "Whatever that light is, it's sucking our energy." The artificial gravity failed, and we found ourselves floating in our seats, restrained only by our seatbelts. Panic set in as we realized we were being pulled down towards the lunar surface. "Marcus, do something," cried Elena, the fear evident in her voice. But there was nothing I could do. Our engines were dead, our communication systems mute. We were puppets in the hands of a force we couldn't understand. As we got closer to the surface, more disturbing details of the alien structure revealed themselves. What once looked like geometric patterns now resembled moving hieroglyphics, telling a story that our brains couldn't process. And in the center of it all, a cavernous opening was expanding, like a mouth about to swallow us. "Brace for impact!" I shouted, clutching my chair as Artemis 7 plunged into the darkness of the alien structure. The shock never came. Instead, we were enveloped by a feeling of total disorientation. The lights inside the ship flickered on and off, plunging us into absolute darkness. For a moment, there was total silence. Then we heard it. A low, almost subliminal hum began to resonate through the ship's hull. It gradually increased, turning into a chorus of alien voices that seemed to sing directly into our minds. "What's going on?" Yuki's voice trembled in the dark. I can feel something invading my thoughts." Before I could answer, a strange light began to seep through the ship's hatches. It wasn't the ethereal blue we'd seen before, but a sickly green that pulsed to the rhythm of the alien chanting in our heads. When my eyes adjusted, I wished they had remained in darkness. Through the windows of the Artemis 7, we saw that we were in a vast hangar. But it wasn't empty. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of shapes moved in the dimness, creatures that defied description, with anatomies that seemed to change every moment we looked at them. "My God," whispered Dmitri, his voice barely audible over the growing hum. "They're coming towards us." And they were. The creatures approached our stranded ship, their movements fluid and inhuman. Tentacles, appendages, and structures that had no name in terrestrial science stretched out towards us. Panic gripped the crew. Jack struggled frantically with the ship's inert controls. Elena prayed in a frantic whisper. Yuki shouted orders into the dead communicator. I was paralyzed, unable to look away from the horror unfolding before us. It was then that I realized this wasn't a discovery, it was a trap, and we were the bait. As the alien creatures surrounded our ship, a terrible certainty crystallized in my mind. Our mission to map anomalies on the moon had not been a coincidence. Someone or something had led us here. The question that plagued me as the first alien tentacle touched Artemis 7's hull was, why? The metal began to melt under the creature's touch, and I knew our time was up. Whatever awaited us beyond those alien walls, one thing was certain: humanity would never be the same again. As the air began to escape through the newly formed hole, my last thoughts were of the Earth, so distant and innocent. God help us, for we had just opened a door that could never be closed. The metal of the Artemis 7 gave way with a horrible squeal, and the vacuum of space invaded our cabin. My lungs burned, fighting for air, while the darkness threatened to swallow my consciousness. However, just when I thought it was the end, something unexpected happened. A viscous, phosphorescent substance began to spread throughout the interior of the ship, sealing the gaps and restoring pressure. I took a deep breath, choking and coughing as my eyes adjusted to the pulsating light now emanating from the walls. "Are we alive?" Elena's trembling voice broke the silence, echoing eerily in the altered environment. Before she could answer, a tremor ran through the ship. The walls began to dissolve, not in a destructive way, but as if they were being absorbed into the surrounding environment. In a matter of seconds, we found ourselves exposed to the interior of the alien structure. The hangar we had landed in was vast beyond comprehension, its dimensions defying Euclidean logic. Surfaces that seemed solid from a distance turned out to be translucent up close, pulsating with a life of their own. The air, if you could call it that, was dense and charged with luminous particles that danced in hypnotic patterns. "That's impossible," muttered Dmitri, his eyes wide behind the visor of his helmet. "Physics, the laws of nature, none of this should exist." Yuki, our communications expert, was motionless, her gaze fixed on a distant point. "Can you hear?" she whispered. "The voices, they're everywhere." I concentrated and realized she was right. A chorus of whispers permeated the room, not through the air, but directly into our minds. It was a cacophony of alien languages, some melodious, some discordant, all incomprehensible. Jackin, ever the pragmatist, frantically checked the instruments in his spacesuit. "Our systems are still working, but the readings don't make sense. It's like we're in several dimensions at once." I tried to pull myself together, assuming my role as mission leader. "We need to move," I ordered, my voice firmer than I felt. "Stay together and alert. Don't touch anything." We cautiously climbed down from Artemis 7, or what was left of it. Our footsteps echoed strangely, as if the ground itself was responding to our presence. As we advanced, the environment around us seemed to transform, adapting to our passage. Corridors formed and disappeared, doors opened to reveal visions that defied sanity. One moment, we glimpsed a vast alien ocean, its deep purple waters churned by colossal creatures. The next instant, we were standing before a desert of singing crystals, each grain emitting a note in a cosmic symphony. "Marcus!" Eleanor grabbed my arm, her voice trembling. "Look at the walls!" I turned my attention to the surfaces around us and felt my stomach flip. What had once seemed like an abstract texture now revealed itself as a mosaic of faces. Thousands, perhaps millions of expressions frozen in agony or ecstasy, some human, others so alien that they defied description. Are they real?" asked Jack, his voice barely above a whisper. Before he could answer, one of the faces moved, its eyes opening to stare at us. A collective scream of horror echoed through our team as we realized that we weren't just in an alien structure. We were inside something alive. The ground beneath our feet began to pulsate, as if responding to our sudden realization. Tentacles of light emerged from the walls, snaking towards us with predatory curiosity. "Run!" I shouted, panic finally breaking through my facade of calm. We shot down the ever-changing corridor, our footsteps echoing in a symphony of terror. The voices in our minds increased in volume, now a deafening chorus of alien tongues that threatened to shatter our sanity. Yuki stumbled and falling backwards. Before we could reach her, one of the tentacles of light enveloped her. Her scream of agony turned into a strange gargle as her body began to dissolve, becoming part of the living structure around us. "Don't stop!" I ordered, even though every fiber of my being was screaming to save our companion. But I knew, with terrible certainty, that Yuki was already beyond help. We turned a corner and found ourselves in a vast chamber. In the center, pulsing with an ominous energy, was a structure that could only be described as a heart. Veins of light extended from it in all directions, pumping some kind of energy into the rest of the structure. "It's the control center," gasped Dmitri, his eyes shining with a mixture of fear and scientific fascination. "If we can understand how it works." A deafening roar interrupted his thoughts. On the other side of the chamber, a colossal figure emerged from the shadows. It was an amalgamation of forms, tentacles and limbs merging and separating in a grotesque ballet of flesh and light. "Welcome, explorers," a voice rang out in our minds, so ancient and vast that it threatened to crush our consciousness. "You have been chosen." Elena fell to her knees, her hands clenching the sides of her helmet as if to block out the invasive voice. Jack was paralyzed, his glazed eyes fixed on the entity before us. The creature approached, each step making reality itself tremble. "For eons, we have watched your kind, waiting for the right moment. Now, you will be the heralds of our arrival." Tentacles of light stretched out towards us, carrying promises of cosmic knowledge and unimaginable horrors. Part of me wanted to give in, to dive into the abyss of alien wisdom that was opening up before us. But a persistent voice in the back of my mind screamed that this would mean the end of everything we knew as humanity. With a superhuman effort, I tore my eyes away from the entity and turned to my remaining team. "We have to destroy this place," I said, my voice hoarse with fear and determination. Dmitri nodded slowly, his gaze coming into focus. "Artemis 7's reactors, if we could cause an overload." "No!" The alien voice thundered in our minds, the chamber shaking with its fury. "You cannot deny your destiny." Ignoring the searing pain in my head, I started running back to our ship, dragging Elena with me. Jack and Dmitri followed us, dodging the tentacles of light that were now attacking with fury. As we raced through the ever-changing corridors, I knew we were in a race against time. Not just against the alien entity that was chasing us, but against the transformation that threatened to consume our minds and bodies. Artemis 7 appeared in front of us, partially absorbed by the living structure, but still recognizable. With one last desperate effort, we launched ourselves towards the controls. While Jack worked frantically to start the self-destruct sequence, I turned to face the horror that was coming. The alien entity filled the corridor, its shape shifting and contorting in ways that defied comprehension. "You don't understand," it said, its voice now almost pleading. "This is evolution. This is destiny." For a moment, I hesitated. The promises of cosmic knowledge and power were tempting, but then I remembered Earth, the home we had left behind, and I knew what had to be done. "Now, Jack!" I shouted. The roar of Artemis 7's reactors going into overload drowned out the alien entity's cry of fury. As a blinding white light began to engulf everything around us, I had one last thought. May God forgive us for what we have discovered, and may humanity never again dare to venture so far into the abysses of the unknown. The explosion of the Artemis 7 reactors was like the birth of a miniature star. For an instant, I was blinded by a flash so intense that I thought my eyes had been incinerated. The deafening roar was followed by absolute silence, as if the universe itself had held its breath. As my vision began to return, dotted with dark spots and flashes of residual light, I realized that I was floating. The artificial gravity of the alien structure had failed, and we were now at the mercy of the weak lunar pull. "Status report," I shouted, my voice sounding strange and distant in my own ears. "Still alive." "I think," came Jack's hesitant reply. He was floating a few meters away, his spacesuit scorched and damaged. Elena and Dmitri also replied, their voices strained with pain and confusion. I looked around, trying to assess our situation. The alien structure was in ruins, large sections torn away by the explosion, exposing the vacuum of space. Fragments of metal and alien organic matter floated around us in a macabre dance of destruction. But something was wrong. Terribly wrong. "My arm," Elena whispered, her voice shaking with horror. "Marcus, my arm." I turned my attention to her and felt my stomach turn. Where her left arm should have been, there was now a pulsating mass of alien tissue, glowing with the same ethereal light we had seen on the structure. "It's some kind of infection," Dmitri said, his scientific voice fighting against the obvious panic. "The explosion must have released spores or nanites. We're all contaminated." He was right. Looking down at my own body, I saw patches of luminescence spreading beneath the surface of my suit. Jack let out a muffled scream, ripping off his helmet to reveal that his eyes had turned into glowing orbs, pulsing with an inhuman inner light. "We need to get out of here," I said, struggling to stay calm. "Go back to Earth, find a cure." "Earth?" Jack laughed, a hysterical, broken sound. "We can't go back like this. We'd be quarantined, or worse." He was right, of course, but what was the alternative? Die here in the far reaches of the moon, transformed into something that was no longer human? A tremor ran through the remains of the alien structure. And for a moment, I thought it was another explosion. Then I realized the terrible truth. The structure was regenerating. "Movement! 10 o'clock!" shouted Dmitri. Turning around, I saw a mass of tentacles and alien flesh writhing towards us. In the center of the mass, I recognized with horror the deformed remains of Yuki, her eyes now replaced by pulsating sensors. She merged with them," Elena whispered, her voice breaking. The creature that had once been our teammate advanced, its mouth opening in a silent scream into the vacuum of space. Tentacles of light extended towards us, carrying promises of a terrible union. "Thrusters!" I ordered, activating the maneuvering jets on my suit. "We need to get to the lander." We propelled ourselves through the wreckage, dodging lethal fragments and the tentacles that sought to capture us. Every second, I could feel the transformation advancing in my body. My thoughts were foggy, invaded by alien visions and knowledge that no human being should possess. I glimpsed the landing module, miraculously intact, anchored a few kilometers away on the lunar surface. It was our only hope of escape, our last chance of returning to Earth. "We can't all go," Jack said suddenly, his voice strangely calm. I looked at him and saw that the transformation had progressed even further. Half of his face was now a mass of sensors and tentacles, pulsing with alien life. "What are you talking about? Of course we can," I shouted, refusing to accept what he was implying. Jack smiled, a grotesque gesture with his new physiognomy. The module only has fuel for 3. Besides, he paused, his alien eyes focusing on something beyond us. I think it's already too late for me. Before we could react, Jack activated his thrusters in the opposite direction, launching himself back towards the remains of the alien structure. The Yuki creature immediately changed direction, chasing him. "Jack, no!" Elena shouted, trying to go after him. I grabbed her, knowing we couldn't risk it. "He's giving us a chance," I said, my voice hoarse with emotion. "We can't waste it." With heavy hearts, we continued our desperate journey towards the lander. Every movement was agony, our bodies fighting against the alien transformation that threatened to consume us. We finally reached the module, dragging ourselves inside with the last remnants of our human strength. As Dmitri began the launch sequence, I looked through the hatch one last time. The alien structure was almost completely regenerated, its surface rippling with unnatural life. In the center of it, I could see 2 figures merging, Jack and the creature Yuki, now united in a grotesque symbiosis. "Take off in 10 seconds, announced Dmitri, his voice tense. Elena grabbed my hand and I could feel the alien pulse in her veins. "What will happen to us, Marcus?" she asked, fear evident in her transformed eyes. I didn't have an answer. As the module rose from the lunar surface, leaving behind the horror we had unleashed, I knew that our ordeal was far from over. Black space opened up before us, the Earth a distant blue dot. But as we neared home, a terrible realization hit me. We were no longer just explorers returning from a mission. We were carriers of something beyond human comprehension, our minds and bodies battlegrounds between what we were and what we were becoming. And the Earth, innocent and unsuspecting, awaited our arrival. I looked down at my hands, observing the alien patterns that now pulsed under my skin, and wondered, when we got home, would we still be human enough to resist the call from the cosmos that was now echoing in our transformed minds? The lander sped towards Earth, carrying with it the fate of humanity and the unspeakable horrors we had discovered on the hidden side of the moon. Our mission was over, but I suspected that our real journey had only just begun. The return to Earth's atmosphere was an inferno of fire and twisted metal. Our module, designed for a controlled re-entry, barely held together under the force of the impact. Alerts sounded throughout the cabin, red lights flashed frantically, and the smell of burnt circuits filled the air. But the real horror wasn't around us. It was inside us. During the journey back, the alien transformation had accelerated. My skin was now a mosaic of human flesh and bioluminescent tissue. Every beat of my heart sent pulses of bluish light through my body, visible even through the damaged spacesuit. Elena had lost the battle against the mutation in her left arm. The limb was now completely alien, a tangle of tentacles and sensors that moved with a will of their own. Her eyes, once a deep brown, now glowed with a supernatural inner light. Dmitri seemed the least affected on the outside, but his behavior was erratic. At times, he mumbled in unknown languages, his glazed eyes fixed on some point beyond reality. "Impact in 30 seconds, I shouted, struggling against the controls that seemed to have a life of their own. The module broke through the clouds, revealing the vast ocean below. For a moment, I felt overwhelming relief at seeing the familiar blue of our home planet again. But that feeling was soon replaced by an icy terror. We were no longer just astronauts returning from a mission. We were vectors of a cosmic infection, carriers of an alien horror that threatened everything we knew. The impact with the water was brutal. The module bounced off the surface like a stone, before finally sinking into the dark depths of the ocean. Water began to seep through the cracks in the hull, mixing with the blood oozing from our wounds. "We have to get out," shouted Elena, her voice distorted by pain and transformation. We struggled to open the emergency hatch, our superhuman strength finally overcoming the twisted metal. Salt water flooded into the cabin, and for a terrifying moment, I thought we were going to drown right there, so close to home. But then something strange happened. My lungs, now partially transformed, seemed to be able to extract oxygen from the water. It was an alien and disturbing sensation. but it kept us alive as we desperately swam to the surface. When we finally surfaced, panting and disoriented, we saw lights on the horizon. Helicopters were rapidly approaching, their search beams sweeping the water. "We've been detected," said Dmitri, his voice strangely calm. "They'll come for us." Elena grabbed my arm, her tentacles tangling with my mutated skin. "Marcus, what do we do? We can't let them capture us like this." I knew she was right. If we were captured, we would immediately be quarantined, subjected to experiments, perhaps even eliminated as threats to global security. But the alternative, we have to hide, I decided, my voice sounding strange even to myself. At least until we understand what's happening to us. We swam away from the lights, our new physiology allowing us to cut through the waves with superhuman speed and efficiency. We reached a secluded beach, our bodies leaving bioluminescent trails in the wet sand. As we dragged ourselves out of the water, I saw our distorted reflections in a pool of water. What I stared back at were no longer human beings, but something hybrid, alien, monstrous. "My God," Elena whispered, her voice breaking. "What have we become?" Before I could answer, a wave of pain shot through my body. I fell to my knees, screaming in agony as I felt my flesh reshape itself. Next to me, Elena and Dmitri were going through the same torment. It was then that the voices began. They weren't audible voices, but alien thoughts invading our minds. Visions of distant worlds, civilizations beyond human comprehension, knowledge that no earthly being should possess. "They're talking to us," Dmitri muttered, his eyes now completely black, reflecting the stars above. "No!" I shouted, fighting against the mental invasion. "We're human! We have to resist!" But even as I fought, part of me longed to give in. The cosmic knowledge flowing into my mind was intoxicating, promising power and understanding beyond the wildest dreams of human science. A roar of engines cut through the air, and powerful lights illuminated the beach. Military vehicles emerged from the darkness, surrounding us. Men in protective suits advanced, guns pointed in our direction. "Stay where you are," an amplified voice ordered. "You are under quarantine by order of the United States government." Elena turned to me, her alien eyes shining with fear and determination. "Marcus, we can't let them capture us. What they'll do to us, what we'll do to them." She was right. In our current state, we were a threat to humanity. But we were also their only hope of understanding and possibly combating what had transformed us. I made a decision at that moment, a choice that would seal not only our fate, but potentially that of the entire human race. "Run!" I shouted, activating some newfound power that made my body glow with alien energy. We shot across the beach, our mutated bodies propelling us with impossible speed. Shots echoed behind us, but somehow we knew that bullets couldn't stop us now. As we ran towards the unknown, leaving behind the world we once called home, a terrible certainty solidified in my mind. Our mission on the moon had not ended with the destruction of the alien base. Somehow, unconsciously, we had become ambassadors for something vast and incomprehensible, and now, transformed and persecuted, we would have to decide what role we would play in the future of the Earth and, perhaps, the entire galaxy. The night swallowed us up, our glowing forms disappearing into the darkness. Behind us, we left a world on the brink of chaos, about to discover that we were no longer alone in the universe. And worst of all, we weren't sure which side we would be on when the inevitable confrontation arrived. The days that followed our escape merged into a blur of constant movement and incessant transformation. We moved only at night, our bioluminescent bodies camouflaged by the darkness we once feared, but now embraced as an ally. Each dawn found us further from our humanity. Elena was the first to develop the ability to change her shape at will. I watched, fascinated and horrified, as she transformed into a bright-eyed raven to guide us through a dense forest, and then into an unrecognizable aquatic creature to cross a turbulent river. Dmitri, on the other hand, seemed to be merging with the very technology around us. His hands became living interfaces, capable of hacking any electronic system with a simple touch. He guided us through cities, manipulating traffic lights and security cameras to keep our passage unnoticed. As for me, my transformation was more subtle, but perhaps the most disturbing. My mind expanded, absorbing cosmic knowledge that no human being should possess. Sometimes I found myself muttering equations that unified quantum physics and general relativity, or describing the history of civilizations that existed billions of years before the Earth was formed. But with each new power, with each transformation, we felt our humanity slipping through our fingers like fine sand. "We need a plan," Elena said one night as we hid in a cave in the mountains. Her voice had a strange timbre now, as if several vocal cords were working in harmony. "We can't keep running away forever." Dmitri, his eyes now more like digital displays than biological organs, nodded. "I agree. Besides, the world is in chaos. Our escape didn't go unnoticed." He wasn't exaggerating. Through our new abilities, we had access to global information. Rumors about alien astronauts were spreading like wildfire across the internet. Governments around the world had declared a state of emergency. Paranoia and fear were driving society to breaking point. Maybe we should turn ourselves in," I suggested, the remaining human part of me squirming with guilt. "Explain what happened. Try to help." Elena laughed, a sound that was both beautiful and terrifying. "Help? Marcus, look at us. We're the very definition of an alien threat. They would destroy us without hesitation." She was right, of course. But then, what were we supposed to do? Keep running away while the world we were sworn to protect fell into chaos? Or fully embrace our new nature, leaving behind the last vestiges of our humanity? That's when I felt it, a vast, ancient presence touching my expanded mind. For a moment, I was transported back to that chamber on the lunar base, in front of the entity that had transformed us. "They're coming," I muttered, my eyes widening with the cosmic knowledge that flooded my consciousness. Dmitri and Elena turned to me, their bodies tensing in anticipation. "Who?" they asked in unison. "The others," I replied, barely recognizing my own voice. "The ones who built the moon base. We're just the first stage, the vanguard of something much bigger." Images flowed through my mind. Vast fleets of alien ships approaching the solar system, technologies beyond human comprehension, civilizations so ancient they made our history seem like the blink of an eye in the cosmos. "How much time do we have?" Elena asked, her form shifting restlessly between various alien configurations. I closed my eyes, letting the knowledge flow through me. "Days, maybe hours." Dmitri let out a series of clicks and hums, his way of expressing frustration now that his physiology had become more machine than flesh. "It's not enough time to prepare the Earth. Not enough time for anything." It was at that moment that I realized the terrible truth of our situation. We were no longer humans, fighting an alien infection. We were hybrids, trapped between two worlds, two forms of existence. And now, we had to choose a side. "Maybe," I began, my voice shaking with the weight of the decision. "Maybe we shouldn't prepare the Earth to fight." Elena and Dmitri turned to me, their alien eyes shining with a mixture of shock and growing understanding. "What are you suggesting, Marcus?" Elena asked, although I suspected she already knew the answer. "I'm suggesting that perhaps our transformation isn't a curse, but an opportunity. A chance to guide humanity to the next stage of evolution." The words came out of my mouth, and part of me was horrified by them. But another part, the part that had touched cosmic knowledge and understood the vastness of the universe, knew it was the only viable option. "Do you want us to be ambassadors?" Dmitri asked, his voice an electronic hum of disbelief. I nodded slowly. "Ambassadors, guides, bridges between what humanity is and what it can become." Elena moved closer, her multifaceted eyes studying me intensely. "What if humanity resists? If they see us as monsters, as invaders?" The question hung in the air, loaded with terrible implications. I closed my eyes, letting the alien knowledge flow through me, searching for an answer. When I opened them again, I saw my reflection in Elena's eyes. It was no longer Dr. Marcus Hartley's face staring back at me, but something new, something transformed, something that carried the weight of decisions that would affect not only Earth, but the entire galaxy. "Then," I replied, my voice resonating with a power that wasn't entirely mine, "we'll have to convince them, one way or another." As we prepared to leave our cave and face the world we once called home, I felt the weight of billions of years of cosmic evolution on my shoulders. We were the heralds of a new era, the bearers of a transformation that would change the course of human history forever. And as the sky above began to brighten with the imminent arrival of the others, I wondered, when all this was over, would there still be anything human left in us to regret the choices we were about to make? The sky was ablaze with impossible colors, a cosmic kaleidoscope that heralded the arrival of the others. While the masses looked up in terror and wonder, the three of us, no longer fully human, not yet fully alien, moved with grim purpose towards the heart of New York. Times Square, once a symbol of human progress and culture, now seemed small and insignificant under the celestial spectacle. Giant screens that once displayed advertisements now showed only static, occasionally interrupted by flashes of alien symbols that made people in the streets scream and cover their eyes. "It's time," I said, my voice reverberating with a power that wasn't entirely my own. Elena, her form now a fluid mixture of flesh and light, nodded. "There's no going back after this, Marcus. Are you sure?" Dmitri, more machine than man, his eyes flashing with incomprehensible data, just waited in silence, ready to fulfill whatever our final decision was. I looked down at my hands, observing how the human skin blended perfectly with the bioluminescent alien tissue. We were the bridge between two worlds, the missing link in a cosmic evolution. And now we had to decide the fate of an entire species. With a gesture, I activated my new powers. A wave of psionic energy swept across the square, instantly silencing the chaos and drawing all eyes to us. I felt the minds of the crowd, a maelstrom of fear, confusion, and a hint of desperate hope. "People of Earth," I began, my voice amplified not by technology but by sheer force of will. "We are the ones you knew as the crew of Artemis 7. We have returned transformed, carrying a message and a future that will challenge everything you believe you know about your place in the universe." As I spoke, Elena and Dmitri used their own powers to project images into the sky, visions of the lunar base, of the entity that transformed us, of the vast galactic empires that awaited beyond the stars. "Humanity is on the brink of a choice," I continued, feeling the weight of billions of years of evolution in my words. "They can cling to what they are, fighting a battle doomed to failure against forces beyond their comprehension. Or they can evolve, transcend the limits of their biology, and join a cosmic community vaster than their wildest dreams." I felt the resistance in the crowd, the fear of the unknown, the deep-rooted instinct to fight change. But I also felt curiosity, wonder, and in some, a burning desire for something more. It was then that the skies opened up. Huge ships, defying the laws of physics as we knew them, descended through the atmosphere. They weren't the flying saucers of science fiction movies, but living constructs, pulsing with energies that made reality around them bend and distort. Pandemonium erupted in the streets. People ran in all directions. Screams of terror filled the air. But in the midst of the chaos, the three of us stood motionless, a beacon of calm in the center of the storm. "Marcus," Elena's voice was urgent, "they're resisting. If we don't act now, there will be bloodshed." Dmitri, his sensors scanning the situation rapidly, agreed. "Military systems around the world are mobilizing. They will strike within minutes." The choice weighed on me like an entire planet. With one thought, I could subdue the minds of humanity, force them to accept the transformation. It would be quick, almost merciful. But in doing so, I would be extinguishing the very spirit that made humans unique. It was then that I felt a vast, ancient presence touching my mind. The entity from the moon base, now multiplied 1,000 times, was here. The choice must be theirs. A voice that was many voices echoed in my consciousness. To force evolution is to deny it. Free will is the catalyst for true transcendence. I then understood the true purpose of our transformation. We weren't conquerors or saviors. We were teachers, guides for a humanity on the verge of its next great evolutionary leap. With new resolve, I stretched out my hands, channeling energies that made the very fabric of reality tremble. People of Earth, my voice thundered, not just through the air, but directly into the minds of every human being on the planet. I offer you not an order, but an invitation. See what we can become. Images flowed from me, visions of an evolved humanity, free from the bonds of mortality and ignorance. I showed them worlds beyond imagination, knowledge that unlocked the secrets of the universe itself. But I also showed them the cost, the loss of human form, the merging with something greater and stranger than they had ever dreamed of. The choice is yours, I concluded, my voice now soft, almost a whisper in the collective mind of humanity. Evolve or remain, transcend or resist. There is no wrong choice, and only different paths in the vast cosmos. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, the world fell silent. Then, slowly, I saw it happen. Here and there, people began to glow with the same alien light that pulsed through us. Others retreated, clinging to each other, choosing to remain human. Families split up, friends separated, as each individual made their choice. Elena, tears of light streaming down her transformed face, held my hand. "It's beautiful," she whispered, "and terrible." Dmitri, his eyes now windows to digital infinity, nodded. The birth of a new species, and the twilight of another. As we watched the transformation spread like waves across the globe, I felt a deep melancholy. Humanity, as we knew it, was coming to an end. But from its ashes, something new and wonderful was being born. The ships of the others hovered silently above, witnesses to a moment they had orchestrated for millennia. I realized then that this wasn't an invasion, but a welcome. An invitation to join a galactic community that waited beyond the stars. As the sun rose on a new day, illuminating a world forever changed, I, Dr. Marcus Hartley, or what was left of him, contemplated the future we had unleashed. It wasn't the end I had feared when we discovered that alien base on the moon. It was a beginning that carried with it all the weight of our lost humanity and all the promise of a cosmic destiny beyond imagination. The hidden side of the moon had concealed more than an alien base. It concealed the next chapter in the great story of evolution. And we, transformed and transcendent, were its reluctant authors. As the morning light bathed a world in metamorphosis, I wondered, in the vast ages to come, would humanity remember this moment? Or, like the sea creatures who first ventured onto land, would we become just a footnote in the great cosmic saga that was just beginning? Only time, vast, inexorable, and now open before us like never before, would tell.